Welcome, everybody. Thursday, July 20th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you from Washington, D.C. with the latest news from Ukraine. Let me get TikTok, as always, rolling on my iPad. And then we'll take 2 minutes to have you guys introduce yourselves while we wait for folks to arrive. There we go. TikTok is rolling. As always, say who you are, where you're from, country, city, whatever. Just sort of share a little bit. And then after about 2 minutes, we'll get rolling. Anyway, hello TikTokers, welcome all, and YouTubers and everybody else, sirs. Susan, hey. Anyway, decent amount of news today. We'll see. I keep even days I don't think there's much news we go on. You know what it is? It's the Q&A, which is good, but this is a day where I could see us getting into a lot of Q&A, so we'll see. We shall see. Thank you, user 336. I could definitely see that. Thank you, John, for the gift there on TikTok already. Oh, hey, Brian in Scotland. Louisa. Thank you, Ava. Appreciate that. We got Rutland, UK. I've not heard of that. Not that I would know. Halifax, heard of that. England, UK, heard of that. Finland, lovely. Welcome to NATO. Anyway, remember, by the way, I'll mention it during the show, but we've got our coffee talk Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time, US. That's New York City times for all of our TikTok subscribers and all of our other paying monthly, basically all of our monthly subscribers. So that's TikTok, YouTube, Discord, Twitch, Ko-fi, etc. So just to remember, if you guys want to join us Saturday morning and you're a paid subscriber, make sure you show up. Salut Daniel. Daniel in both languages. Interesting. Anyway, but yeah, so join us Saturday. Oh, hey, Romania. I don't know how to say. Well, actually, I think we asked the other day how to say hey, Romania. Hey, Big Hawk. Thank you for that. I think you guys said that like many of the Eastern European languages are privyet. There's similar versions on that. Or actually, no. Who was the one? Was it the Czechs or the Romanians who do like the zdravstvuyte, like the Russians do? There was a version of that I remember one of you guys use in the Eastern Europe as well. Was it maybe the Czechs or the Romanians? I don't remember. Yeah, привет. Anyway, hey guys. Yeah, we'll wait another half minute and then we'll get rolling here. Just waiting for folks to weigh in from TikTok and everywhere else. So, salut. Which one are you? Well, you're French, I'm guessing. Which one are you saying salut? I know French. Thank you, Tomcat, for the hearts, and Nicolas or Nicholas, depending where you find yourself. Thank you, Bani. Oh, Greg's having a tornado? Jeez, Greg just like, man. Okay. Boy, not good. That's scary. Québec, Canada, bonjour. Bonjour, Québec. I do speak French. Oui. J'ai fait des études à Paris pendant une année, mais et bon, je travaillais un peu en France aussi. J'aime bien parler français. Mais on peut pas le faire maintenant. Because we'd be changing the entire. Actually, I'd have to research a little bit if I were going to do this in French. I don't speak Dutch. Nope. I do speak French fluently, though. Hey, Pedro, thank you for that. But the thing is, to talk Ukraine, though, I would probably have to research some words because I don't know the words in French. Hey, Monty, thank you for that. Like all the different, and TBI Chris as well. German, not a lick. I speak Spanish, French, and Italian. My Spanish and French are fluent. My Italian was fluent, a little rusty now. Thank you. Merci. Et bien sûr, français ou parisien, n'importe quoi, parce que j'étais là. So Nicolas and Nicolas. Okay. Je n'étais pas sûr si c'était Nicolas ou Nicolas. Okay, I can't do this in Greek. I do speak Greek. My Greek was fluent, and now, Milau linika la ohitoso kala, yati then, kani polach or polachronia puden milau. With my mom a little bit, not really, even with my mom, not really. We do a little Greek English with mom. But my Greek used to be fluent, but not anymore. But yes, Spanish. Okay, we'll do Spanish. Oh, God. Difícil porque estoy pensando en francés ahorita. Entonces, para hablar en español también puede ser un poco confundido, ¿no? Pero sí, bueno, hablo español también bastante bien. I speak Spanish very well. I'm just not, pero no conozco las palabras para hablar sobre Ucrania. El español para nada. So, all right. Now we've showed off enough in foreign languages. I know Romanian. I've been wanting to study Romanian. My French is much better than Greek. Oh no, my French is my best language. It's very good. Um, my Spanish is excellent, but French is better. So Spanish gets a little rusty. And my Greek was fluent, but Greek was never my top language. French was always my top language. Well, always, almost always my top language, then Spanish. Then Greek came up still below Spanish because Spanish, I've got so many years of study, I've got the vocabulary. And then Italian was fluent, but limited vocabulary, but still pretty fluent. And it's rusty now, but I can get it back. Okay. Anyway, enough of languages. Welcome, everybody. My English is good. Let's do English. So welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here at the Aravosis Report. We were just chatting a little bit to wait for folks to arrive from TikTok and YouTube. And now that you're here, we can get rolling. I am John Aravosis. I report from Washington, D.C., and my show is basically about updating you guys on the latest news from Ukraine. And then the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. As always, anybody who wants to pose questions first, the only other way we have of really doing it is YouTube for the super chat questions. If you guys want to support my work, thank you, LWD and Catherine. If you guys want to support my work on YouTube and ask super chat questions, I will always get to those as the next thing I talk about, even if we're not in the question period. Super chat questions, I'll always answer immediately. So thank you for that. And generally speaking, like I said, please do support my work with the gifts. I very much appreciate it. The TikTok gifts, the YouTube chats, and the super chats and super stickers. I do this for free. I do it full time. The reason I'm able to do it is because of your guys' gifts. Quite literally, you have helped me pay the bills the last 14 months. So please keep them coming. Thank you, Jules, for the slime, and Mari and Swan with the mariachi. So yeah, let's get rolling here. So today is day 511. Thank you, Russell and Ava, of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. We do have our coffee talk on Saturday. So remember that anybody who is a paid subscriber on TikTok, on YouTube, Discord, Twitch, I may be forgetting something, but the paid monthly subscribers, thank you, Soren, very generous of you. And thank you, LWD. But all the paid subscribers, and Al, I see yours as well. Thank you. Any of the paid subscribers for the monthly subscriptions, join us Saturday morning on TikTok, of the TikTok paid subscribers at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, US, and you guys on YouTube, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, US. All right. So Russia is continuing to hit Ukraine. They claim in retaliation for Ukraine hitting the Kerch Bridge the other day. I try not to use the word retaliation, and a lot of the folks in the media actually, which is good. Well, actually, some of the good media folks are trying to not to use it as well, because it almost, it almost legitimizes what the Russians are doing, right? By calling it retaliation. Nonetheless, the Russians are continuing to hit Ukraine. They're especially continuing to have to, sorry, Brandy's asking really quick. Do I have to connect my YouTube to Discord to watch Saturday? Yes, you do. If you will have to go to Discord, and you will, if you have a Discord, otherwise you have to create a Discord account for free, and then log in the Discord, join my server, of course, and from it, go to the settings. Yeah, Mikola, can one of you guys help her? Thank you. In any case, Discord itself is free. Thank you, Red Watts, but you can pay if you want to basically support me, but otherwise it's free. There's special benefits if you pay, but otherwise it's free. So Odessa. So the Russians are hitting for the third day in a row, Ukrainian city of Odessa. Odessa, you might recall, is in southern Ukraine all the way down here. Okay, remember, this is what the Russians control. So the Russians control up right south of the river. So basically, well, the spit has been contested, but south of the river here. So Odessa, that's over here, is still free. It is Ukraine's major port. It is the port where a lot of the grain was coming out of. And the Russians, of course, shut that down the other day, said they're no longer going to participate in the grain deal. Just to remind folks what the grain deal was, when the war broke out, Russia pretty much shut down all of Ukraine's exports by sea. Ukraine is one of the world's top grain exporters, and for 3 months they couldn't export anything. That's a big hit to the Ukrainian economy, but it's also a big hit to the world because Ukraine exports about 10% of the world's grain. That may not sound like a lot, but 10% of the world's grain is quite a lot. Thank you, Larissa. It's also especially a lot for around 43 million people who rely on Ukrainian grain and who are basically in danger of hunger. Okay, so it's a big deal. Well, a deal was worked out last July with Turkey, the United Nations, Ukraine, and Russia to let Ukraine continue to export the grain. Russia finally reneged on the deal and said, we're not doing it anymore. The British Ministry of Defense said today that they're pretty convinced that the Russians decided a long time ago that the deal just wasn't in there. They felt they weren't getting let me rephrase this. they felt the deal wasn't in their interest. For whatever crazy reason, it's not clear to me why Russia even allowed the deal, but for whatever reason, Russia allowed the deal to go through. In other words, Russia said, we won't attack Ukrainian ships. Well, they pulled the plug the other day. And in retaliation now, not retaliation, but what they're starting to do now is they're blowing up the Ukrainian port at Odessa in order to stop Ukraine from being able to export grain. What the Russians are also doing, according to the White House, the Russians are also putting mines in the sea. Thank you, Catherine, or Catherine, or Katrine. I'm not sure which one you are. The Russians are putting mines in the sea, and the White House says they're doing this so that they can basically blow up the ships, but then somehow blame the Ukrainians for it. Thank you, Vicky. And I'm not sure what maybe the blame of the Ukrainians will say that they're Ukrainian mines or something. But the Russians, what's interesting to me here is that it seems that the Russians are trying kind of a coy way to impact the grain deal. The obvious way would be just blow up the ships, right? If you see ships, blow them up. Russia's not doing that. Now, I will say right now it's not clear that any ships are going because there's probably a lot of uncertainty right now because no one knows, will the Russians blow up the ship? Two, hard to believe that anybody is going to insure any ships going to Ukraine right now because the Russians have said they're going to blow them up. So if you can't get insurers, the ships themselves aren't going to run because they're not military ships, they're commercial ships, right? And businesses won't run like that. So in any case, what Russia's trying to do, at least in the meantime, is scare people away from using the Ukrainian ports by saying we're going to blow things up. Well, the Ukrainians turned around and decided to put the shoe on the other foot and do the same thing back to the Russians. So what the Ukrainians did in the last day is the Ukrainians said, fine, starting midnight on July 21st, I think, which would be, yes, tomorrow, July 21st, we are going to start attacking ships as well. And we're going to start attacking ships and treat them just like you did as being military ships, right? So the interesting question there, okay, a couple different things. Ukraine is probably trying to do the exact same thing Russia's doing, which is hopefully by even saying they're going to, and by the way, sorry, the Russian ships. So the Russian ships, thank you, B. Smith, for that. The Russian ships, Russia, okay, you got the map here. Obviously, this map, I probably do. I like this map. I am never replacing this map, by the way. This T-shirt map is now part of the show. And it's actually a pretty good map of Ukraine, even though it gets little wrinkles and stuff. But what it doesn't show you, I probably should get a map that's like the larger region. That would probably be helpful. Something around this size, but it's the larger region. Because what you would see is, you'd see Russia over here, and then you'd see Russia continue here and here. So there'd be this sea right here, okay? This little sea here off of Ukraine. That sea goes through this little divider here between Ukraine and Russia. What's across Ukraine and Russia? The Kerch Bridge, the bridge the Ukrainians blew up, right? So you have this little sort of inlet of the sea, and then the Black Sea here with Russia, over here. So the Russians have ports along here. They have ports along here. I'm trying to remember exactly where, but the Russians have ports along here. And of course, now the Russians have ports along here because they're using the Ukrainian ports that they're occupying, okay? So what the Ukrainians have said is, fine, you're going to blow up any ships going to our ports around here. We're going to blow up any ships coming from your ports around here. Well, hopefully what that does, thank you, Chief. Hopefully what that does is scare the same insurers that are worried about Ukrainian ports will be worried about Russian ports. And hopefully it will get Russia to not be able to export its oil, among other things, which would be huge because there's a lot of Russian oil that comes out of the ports in that area. Let me see, but just to give you a little, now another thing going on, this was actually interesting numbers in terms of what the Russians shot at the Ukrainians and what the Ukrainians were able to take down last night. Thank you, Carla, for that. Russia pretty much attacked Odessa and neighboring Mykolaiv. They attacked other cities too. Thank you, Carol. But the big attacks were Odessa here and Mykolaiv, which is right over here. So again, they were trying to go after the whole sort of grain exporting area. Russia shot 19 cruise missiles and 19 drones. Ukraine was only able to knock down 5 of the cruise missiles and 13 of the drones. Now, the drones, okay, 13 of 19, whatever. That's not terrible. The cruise missiles, 5 of 19 is awful. I mean, that's horrible. Ukraine's been doing much better than that. Ukraine, again today, said they need more anti-aircraft weapons. The problem is, for example, Patriot missile batteries. Ukraine's got 2, right? One is around Kyiv, the capital, and the other one who knows where it is. But the problem is they don't have enough of the high end anti missile systems to protect, to basically, or to be, well, to be mobile and to protect multiple cities of what they've got. They need to be able to protect the south as well. They don't have enough to protect it. That's why these missiles got through. One little bit of Schadenfreude, maybe we'll call it that, with the attack is among the things that were attacked and were the windows. Russian bomb blew out the windows of the Chinese consulate in Odessa last night. Thank you, Katrine. So there was that, at least, because of course the Chinese are big supporters of the Russians, have been kind of wishy-washy in terms of the aid they're giving the Russians. They're not giving them outright military aid, but they're very supportive of the war effort. Let me see here. Oh, in terms of whether, I was going to say briefly, thank you, Marie, whether Ukraine actually could follow through on its threat is very interesting, to blow up the Russian ships that are, leaving the Russian ports there in the area. We know that the Ukrainians developed their own cruise missile, the Neptune cruise missile. This is the missile, that was used to blow up. Thank you, Russell. The missile that was used to blow up and sink the Moskva, which was the flagship of the Russian fleet in the area. Remember, huge deal back in April or so, right? So that's a big deal. That's good. We know they've got that. The question becomes, I was actually looking into this today too, and looking at my phone to make sure. There we go. I look at my phone to make sure I can adjust the temperature in here because it gets warm because of the sun out here. So we know they got the Neptune cruise missiles. Not clear. Well, actually, I was going to say the Neptune cruise missile, they sank the Moskva when it was at sea. So it means they should be able to sink other Russian ships at sea. Depends on what the ranges of the Moskva, of course. The other thing they've got, I was inquiring on this today, is the Ukrainians, have the British Storm Shadow cruise missiles. They've also got the French ones, they're called Scalp, I think. The French ones that are coming sometime soon, around 50 of them. But they've got the British cruise missiles. Those cruise missiles can go, depending on them, somewhere around 350 miles at least. 350 miles, I'm going to guess, is it 575 kilometers maybe? Alexa, how many kilometers is 350 miles?
350 miles is about 563 kilometers.
Yes. I'm getting good at my metrics. You guys you've made me have to adopt the metric system. I said 575. I got close. That's a really good distance. And looking into it today, we're able to find out that even though the British cruise missiles are not they're not really made to attack moving ships, right? They're meant to go after land targets. They probably could hit a moving ship, at least from the research a friend and I did this afternoon. So that's an interesting option right there. Now, it depends how many of them the Ukrainians have got. Keep in mind, each of these missiles costs $1 or $2 million with an M, right? Sophie's saying they're saving them up. That could be very true. They could be saving them up. I mean, the Brits may have told them, look, this is how many we've got and we don't have any more. So literally be careful how you use them. Now, they are getting 50-50 of the French ones as well. It's also possible that they don't really want to hit the Russian ships yet. Maybe they want to make a threat over it and not actually take them down. Will a Russian blockade work? I think that's what I was just talking about in terms of actually, this was interesting. This was from the British Ministry of Defense today. They were talking about the Russians and whether the Russians would be able to go after the Ukrainian ships. They argued that any effort by the Russians to blockade the Ukrainians would be at risk from Ukrainian uncrewed surface vehicles, meaning, thank you, Succeed, meaning Ukrainian boat drones or drone boats, right? The same kind of thing they used to blow up the Kerch Bridge, they would use to go after Russian ships, and coastal defense cruise missiles, which we just talked about, the various cruise missiles, whether it's the Neptune cruise missiles that the Ukrainians developed or the Storm Shadows that the Brits have. Yes, correct. Yeah, actually, I'm looking right here. Yep. Bob says, can Ukraine use Storm Shadow to strike the ship? A military-minded friend and I looked into it today, and what we were able to find out is yes, you can use a Storm Shadow to attack a ship that is at sea. It as long as you get it close, that it can then identify the signature of the ship or whatever it is. It can then get the ship and do a really good job because, of course, it's got a big payload on it too. So you can, yes. It was, at least from the people we talked to, it was not at all a crazy idea to use it for that, even though it's not typically used for that. Now, if you think about it, it probably makes sense because from a British perspective, right? They've got lots of other missiles that they use when they want to go after ships. They don't need to use a Storm Shadow. So the Storm Shadow would not be the missile they would use. That doesn't mean it wouldn't work well going after a ship, right? Right. And Mike is talking about harpoon missiles, right? Just because there's other missiles that we would use or other systems we would use for taking down ships doesn't mean the other systems might not do an okay job, right? So there you go. Chandler Bing. I hope it's the old Chandler Bing and not the current, because he ain't looking so good lately. But I'll take it for Chandler. Thank you. All right. Oh, okay. I'll tell you really quick. So actually today I think will be a normal news day. We can hopefully sort of finish on time and everything else, maybe even go to Discord. So one of the things I always hit you guys up for, and I will hit you up again, if you can support my work, I would appreciate it, either with the gifts on TikTok, the gifts on YouTube, because I do this full time. Literally, this is my job. I'm not wealthy. No one's paying me to do this. I have been able to do it now for about 15 months because the gifts you guys give me and the memberships you do, you sign up for the different membership programs, Patreon, Discord, Ko-fi, etc., have enabled me to keep doing this. But I got to keep hitting you up because that's the only way to make it work. So I, of course, will keep hitting you up for the gifts on TikTok, the gifts on YouTube, but also if you got the cash, only if you can afford it. If you've been watching for a while and you like my work, consider, thank you, TikTok Novice and Michael. If you could consider, thank you, Kanausi, signing up for a monthly membership. Now, the monthly memberships, there's lots of different ways to do it. I will just tell you briefly to make it simple. Thank you, Russell, there too. On YouTube, you can just use YouTube memberships. Thank you, Doug, for the super sticker there. You can use YouTube memberships. Click the $ at the bottom of the comment box. I mean, you can do it now just to look at it. Click the $ on YouTube at the bottom of the comment box. It pops up. You'll see super chat, super stickers, ways to help out, and memberships. Click membership, and then you'll see the 3 membership categories. Thank you, Mando. And if you so choose, you can become a monthly member. Your name will turn green, so I know you're a monthly member. Which is nice, frankly, like Susan, like Carlos. I'm scanning back right now. Brendy, and I'm sure some other, I don't want to miss anybody. I'm not going to go all the way back. Karen and some others. Thank you, Succeed again. But it also gives you access to our weekend shows. What you guys can do on TikTok, by the way, you can use Ko-fi is probably the easiest way to do it. Just go to my profile on TikTok, click the link. Very first thing that comes up is Ko-fi, Ko-fi. Thank you, Marie. And use that site, or coffee if you want to call it. Sign up for a monthly membership. Same thing. Link it to my Discord community, and you can be a VIP member of my Discord. You can do our VIP auctions. By the way, we've got some really cool stuff. I'll show you one thing first, real quick. I've got actually the coolest stuff I've got in our auctions this week on Discord. We do auctions to benefit Ukraine and my work. 50% of every auction gets sent back to Ukraine. 50% goes to support me. Among other things, cool Ukrainian police badges. How cool is this? A real Ukrainian police badge. These are from Ukrainian traffic cops, which I think is just totally cool. It says MBC, which is Ministry of Internal Affairs for Ukraine. And at the bottom, it's something like Держavna Auto Inspekcja, auto inspector, car police. But I think it's really cool. And they've got the little, little pin on the back. Anyway, this is one of the VIP auction items that only our VIP members can bid for. I've got some other stuff I'll show you later, but that's what you get if you become a supporting member. You can go and bid in our VIP auctions, join us on the weekends. Anyway, I'll get back to the show, but if anybody's watching, and like I said, if you can afford it on TikTok, please consider going to my profile, click the link, and go to the Ko-fi, very top link, and subscribe. You guys use the button at the bottom of the screen, the $ signal. And thank you, PP, for the super stickers as well. Always very welcome. All right. Washington Post reports today that Ukraine is using cluster munitions and using them very well, which is really good news. Thank you, adventures there. The cluster munitions, you'll remember, I'm looking back here real quick. Adam and Adventures and Marie, TikTok Novice, Doreen, Mando. I'm just looking at some of the gifts that popped up when I was doing my my chat there. Kanausi, TikTok Novice, Michael. Okay. I've caught up with a lot of you. Okay, thank you all for the gifts. Washington Post report, TikTok. Ukraine has been using their cluster munitions. Remember, they got the cluster bombs just in the last day or two from the U.S. These were, they're controversial, obviously. But what do you do? Thank you, killers, for that. Ukraine is using them against the Russians in trenches. Now, thank you, killers, for the hat there. Very interesting. Oh, Vlad, thank you. Okay, we have somebody from Ukraine watching us. Thank you, Feisty. I don't always read the comments when I'm like talking about stuff, but I just happened to see I'm watching your stream from Ukraine. Thank you for supporting us. You are very welcome, Vlad. Everybody, I would say give Vlad some nice emojis of support there. Well, no, thank you for watching, Vlad, and we are very happy to help. So Ukraine using the cluster munitions, very interesting. So the Washington Post reports Ukraine is using them already. They're using them. Thank you, Peach. They're using them against the Russian trenches. Remember that basically Ukraine is having to clear out the Russian mines, the landmines, cluster munitions. Our experts were telling us yesterday, not so good for the landmines, but they are good for going after trenches because the Russians have dug a bunch of literal trenches in the ground and they're hiding in them. You can hide in the trench itself, or they'll even cut like a hole and then be inside, almost like a cave inside the ground. Well, there's a lot of these. And in order to take them out, the Ukrainians are using the cluster munitions. The White House said quite effectively, right after I read that from the White House, I saw there's a lot of really interesting stuff online that I follow from defense experts and a lot of the OSINT people, the open source intelligence folks. And they read a lot of the interesting stuff that the Russians themselves, the Russian troops are posting online, because they're actually posting stuff on stuff like Telegram, which is a social media platform that a lot of the Ukrainians and a lot of the Russians like. Well, I want to read you this. Thank you, Roy, for that. This translation of a Russian soldier today posting about what's happening in their trenches with the Ukrainian cluster bombs that are attacking them. Listen to this. At the moment, the armed forces of Ukraine are demolishing our positions in the Bakhmut direction with cluster munitions. The counter battery fight does not work. Everything is burning all around. The men are holding on, waiting for aviation. The general staff has not yet handed over cluster bombs and rockets with cluster munitions to our guys for answers. It remains only to believe in our guys and our pilots. That is interesting intelligence. That at least makes it sound like, now mind you, it's one battle, it's one attack, but that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Because it's going to take Ukraine a while to get through all of this. Thank you, Darian. Longer than we expected, which is why the counteroffensive is going so, well, not long. We knew it was going to go long, but why we didn't have any of those quick successes like we saw last fall when Ukraine really just pushed Russia out of the Kharkiv region. So anyway, that I thought was really good news to see. Stephen, this is a good question. Stephen asks, a super chat question. Russia's stockpile of ammunition is impressive. No. I am reading two different things about that, and I wonder if anybody else who's sort of up on this can weigh in. Two different things. One, we know historically Russia has crazy amounts of artillery, okay? Like crazy amounts. Having said that, I was reading in the last few months that Russia itself is also having some issues with having enough ammunition, and that they don't necessarily have enough. I don't know whether it's certain kinds of ammunition, you know what I mean? Versus, for example, guns versus artillery versus something else. But I thought that was really interesting because I also then again heard the other day, one of the experts say Russia has, virtually endless amounts of ammunition that it can tap into. So I'm kind of curious about this. Sorry, Callum's saying stockpile of conventional ammunition, bullets, grenades, etc. So, okay, you need to use verbs. Callum's a friend, so I can say that to him. I'm not sure what you mean. You said plus it's not been stored properly. They can't trust their inventory numbers. Okay. But I was also reading in the last few months that the Russians as well were having some issues with, or not issues. It was not clear if the Russians could keep going at this pace, even though we know the Ukrainians, there is a concern about whether the Ukrainians can keep going at this pace. That we know. Let me see. Bet a lot of what they think they've sold in the book. Just hope it will end soon. And, oh, I know. Trust me, Vlad, we all do. But I want you guys to get your land back first, you know? In any case, Zaporizhia nuclear plant. Let's talk a little bit about that too. And actually, you know, and I'll just keep my eye open, Stephen, for that as well, just to see if anything crosses my eye, because I've been curious about that too. But you'll see what I mean if you read stories on it. You're going to see some stories talking about the Russians have got endless amounts of ammunition. Other stories saying you got to be careful, or the Russians may have some problems as well. The Zaporizhia nuclear plant. So we know this week, thank you, Pam, that the Ukrainians warned again their concerns that the Russians are, Ukraine believes, going to blow up the nuclear plant or do something, some kind of an incident at the plant, whether it's actual damage, whether it's feigned or pretend damage, in order to blame Ukraine. But they're planning something. Well, looked into it today, and guess what? The Russians have still not let the United Nations inspect the rooftop of the reactors. Remember last week, satellite imagery that Sky News and then some others had, satellite images showing some strange white things on the roof of reactor 4, I believe. There's 6 reactors at the Zaporizhia plant, one of the reactors. And the Ukrainians had warned that reactors 3 and 4, I believe, were the ones the Russians were going to try to blow up. Thank you, Heine, for the hat there. They were going to try to blow up. The United Nations asked, I think a good 2 weeks ago, the United Nations asked, it's actually a United Nations organization, International Atomic Energy Agency. They're independent, but they're quasi-independent. United Nations inspectors asked to see the rooftop of that building. The Russians have, as of today, they've still refused to let the United Nations inspectors go there. If they're not letting these guys on the rooftop, it's because either there's something there, or the Russians are playing a little psychological terror game, as I call it, where basically they want to convince you that there's something there. So either the Russians literally have the rooftops rigged with something, or in other words, I should say, let me be more general. The Russians are either hiding something on the roofs, or they're doing it in order to convince you they're hiding something because they want people to be scared. They want people to think that the nuclear plant's going to blow up as part of, again, a psychological terrorism campaign. Few more stories. Wagner Group. So Wagner Group, thank you, Randy. You remember the Wagner Group, the mercenary group that tried to overthrow Putin. 300 of their vehicles have now arrived at the camp in Belarus. Belarus, country northwest of Ukraine, right up here. Nice country apparently, but run by a really nasty dictator who's best friends with Putin. The dictator has given the Wagner Group, the mercenary group, a former military base, more or less. I looked on the map and I was able to discern more or less around the V and the K. So I would say more or less around here. I think it's called Tsel or something, or Tessel or something, the name of the town, but it's up here. So it's not terribly far from the Ukrainian border. 300 vehicles. Thank you, Louis. 300 vehicles are already there. So you can guess how many men that, I mean, I would guess that's probably at least 1,000 men, if not more. They apparently today engaged in some joint or some training exercises for the Belarusian military to try to train them on how to, hey, Tiger Fred, thank you for that, in order to try to train the Belarusian military, to fight better. I did see a number today that the Poles appear to have moved about 1,000 men to the border with Belarus. We knew the Poles had moved some troops there. I'd read 500 earlier in the week. Today I saw a number of around 1,000 because they're understandably worried that if the Wagner guys are in Belarus, and Belarus, by the way, Belarus, which is up here, borders not just Ukraine, it also borders Poland. Poland is the next country over, right? This is the border with Poland, and right here. So Belarus is bordering Poland as well. The Poles are not thrilled about a bunch of Wagner mercenaries being on their border, so they've moved a lot of troops basically to the border just to be sure. Interesting. I don't know. I'll throw it out to everybody else. Phoenix is saying in a super chat question, by the way, thank you for that. I know it was a movie, but I heard War Dogs was was telling the truth about Russian ammunition being too old to use. I know that there have been, I know that it's a real concern about Russian ammunition. Yes, I do know that a lot of their stuff is old, but not just that it's old, it's not stored correctly. And my guess is it's also not checked very regularly either. So it's not clear. It's not only not clear if it works, it's not clear whether it's not going to blow up on you. I think I remember this was actually the beginning of the war. Some of the stuff people were talking about was it's not clear that this ammunition might not kill you because it could just go off when you're. I don't know what the actual Callum. Now that's interesting. Callum is a former British military. Callum says a lot of it is missing probably as well. So that basically it's not just a matter of it not being kept very well. It just is gone. They could have sold it. They could have stolen it, and they just go and they lie to people. It's not Kashub. Unfortunately, the mug my sister got me off of Amazon, and whoever was selling it on Amazon stopped selling it. So it's the only one I've got. For now, I'm keeping it. I may auction it off at some point to help Ukraine. Thank you, Artur. But yeah, it's the only one. Correct. That's what I'm thinking. Wild Hunt Corsetry says missing means sold. That's my thought too, that the Russians probably sold it. And one of the things, it's really interesting in terms of the corruption with the Russians. Sorry, my lips are dry. A lot of the corruption with the Russian military is simply lying, like taking money for stuff and then lying. They, the troops fighting in the war, they moved a bunch of these guys. I remember last fall, thank you, Timothy. I remember last fall that the Russians, when they had that big mobilization of the 300,000 new men, remember? And they were bringing them to Eastern Ukraine. The province here and the town of Belgorod that's right here in Russia, right across the border from Ukraine. And the men were saying, they were doing interviews, talking, or they were on social media, and they were saying, they're not letting us do any practice. Thank you, Mads. They're not letting us do any practice. We can't practice with the guns. We can't practice any ammunition. But then some of the generals came to see how the training was going of the new recruits. He says, then they put us out in the field. They gave us the ammunition. They let us fire the weapons. So basically, the generals think these guys are doing daily trainings and everything else, and they're not. They think that they're buying ammunition, and they're not. They think that they're keeping up the ammunition, taking care of it. They're not. Thank you, Cami. They think that they're, actually, they're also then selling the ammunition. But so much of the graft, it seems, in the Russian military, the crime there, or the corruption, is they take the money that they get to do certain things in the military and they just spend it on something else. And then they lie and they say, oh yes, we bought all these weapons and we've been checking them every week and they're fine. And remember now, the same thing happened with the tires. They bought really, really lousy quality Chinese tires for a lot of their vehicles, and they weren't upkeeping the tire. This was something I learned at the beginning of the war, which I did not know, but it makes sense. Military vehicles, you got to do, in terms of upkeep for military vehicles, because military vehicles can sit outside in the sun, like for a very long time, right? You've got them all lined up, waiting to be used or whatever. And one of the things you need to do with military vehicles is you've got to rotate the tires and you've got to move the vehicles, because if, for example, this is a car, right? And the sun rises and sets. Well, the sun is hitting the wheels on this side of the car, or some kind of a Russian vehicle that has tires, right? The sun is hitting this side of the car. It's not hitting this side. Well, what happens to plastic when it's been in the sun for a few years? It starts to get hard and cracks. With military tires, you're supposed to either move the vehicles or move the tires so that everything gets used differently. Well, they were finding with the initial invasion and that initial supply line, the Russians were bringing in the 40-mile long one that was just a disaster, and then the Ukrainians stopped it and blew it up. Well, they were finding that a lot of the tires were just shredding and falling apart because, again, they bought lousy Chinese tires and they never kept them up. Oh, I had always, Booker's saying you're supposed to rotate the tires on all cars. I had heard about that, but I never knew why. I always thought it was like the front tire and the back tire and the left and right get different wear, but I never thought about it as being actually, if your car is in the sun, it's getting, but it probably is the sun as well. I mean, I think of my house, my mom's house or whatever. The car there, the front tires might get sun, but the back tires might not, if you were parked in the front yard, right? Or in the front spot. In any case, very interesting. Just really interesting. The This was a really horrific story. I've only got a couple more stories and then we can do the questions. Thank you, Catherine. The head of the Belarusian Red Cross. So the Red Cross's outfit in Belarus. The head admitted today that, or in a quote that came out today, that they are helping the Russians with their program to kidnap Ukrainian children. This just kind of blew my mind. The quote, listen to the quote. The quote, this is from his name is, did I get the whole name? Shatsu. His last name is Shautsu. I think it's Dmitry Shautsu. He says, when they accuse the Republic of Belarus, okay, little backstory. Russia has been stealing Ukrainian kids. They've been moving them to Russia. Some of them they've been putting up for adoption. The kids have been punished if they say they're Ukrainian, if they sing Ukrainian songs, anything. In other words, as if they do not, thank you, Cindy, if they do not become Russian, they get punished, right? They should sing their song, the patriotic songs with the other Russian kids, etc. And they're literally giving them to families, like taking these kids. The Russians don't know if the kids are orphans or not. Even if they are orphans, who cares, right? You don't take a child just because they're orphans. Right? I mean, I will say the only possibility here is you're literally in a war zone. Bombs are falling left and right, and you find a baby or a small underage child, right? An 8-year-old or a baby, and bombs are falling everywhere. There's no family in sight. You take that child with you to make sure they're okay, and then you contact the Ukrainian authorities and you turn the child over. You don't say, hey, I found a kid when I was right. I was fighting in the next town over trying to kill Ukrainians, and I found a baby. I'm bringing it home. My wife's always wanted one. That's not how it works, right? That is a war crime. That is, by the way, the war crime that Vladimir Putin has already been charged with, is the war crime of stealing the Ukrainian babies and children and trying to turn them into Russians. Well, that is what Belarus, we learned a couple weeks ago. The allegation came out that Belarus was helping the Russians steal these children and bring them to Russia. Listen to this now. So this is the quote of the head of the Red Cross in Belarus responding. When they accuse the Republic of Belarus of kidnapping children who come to us for rehabilitation, let me stop right there. The word rehabilitation is a Stalinist word. I mean, literally, Stalin, the communist dictator, horrific. I mean, Russia ain't great right now. As the Soviet Union, it was a horrific dictatorship. And under Stalin, it was a really horrific dictatorship. Okay. Well, sorry, a little notice came up on my phone. I've got to put my phone out of the way so I'm not looking at it. There we go. The word rehabilitation was used for political prisoners. Political prisoners were rehabilitated. The idea was, it's 1984, the book. If you've ever read 1984, it is, you take them and you basically beat the crap out of them and you torture them and you do everything you can so that at the end of the book, I don't want to ruin it for you, you say, I love the government, I love Putin, I love Stalin, right? You crush the man and you rebuild him as this brainwashed, right? That's what rehabilitation means. When they accuse the Republic of Belarus of kidnapping children who come to us for rehabilitation, frankly speaking, the Belarusian Red Cross has been and is and will be actively involved in this. He described the children as coming to Belarus to have a rest, adding, we try to do everything for them to make them feel at home so that they would not need anything. And most importantly, they were surrounded by love. Well, the International Red Cross is having a conniption fit right now when they found this out, that the local Red Cross, guys, the local Red Cross in Belarus is probably going to be charged with a war crime. I mean, this may be the first time in history that the Red Cross has been charged with a war crime. This is unbelievable. But to admit it, to admit it. Frankly speaking, the Belarusian Red Cross has been and is and will be actively involved in this. It's like, holy cow. Thank you, Catherine. Last two little stories, a little more feel good. A new crowdfunding campaign launched in Lithuania is trying to collect 300,000 euros, which is close to $300,000, to purchase 500 kamikaze drones for Ukraine. And today is Patron's birthday. Patron, you may recall, is the mine-sniffing dog, the Jack Russell Terrier in Ukraine, who became very famous. He has become very famous. I've got Patron's picture in my phone because, of course, I'm that kind of person. This is Patron wearing the Ukrainian Vyshyvanka, wearing the Ukrainian shirt. Is that fabulous? He's 4 years old today. I'll show you guys. I just love this picture of him. He's 4 years old today. This reminds me, I wanted to get a Vyshyvanka for Sasha. Vlad pointed me to some sources for finding Ukrainian dog t-shirts. So I'm going to find some. I'm going to get some of these. I'm going to get some of these for our auctions. So he's 4 years old today. So very cool. Last little thing. Okay, so that's it for the news. Before we do Q&A, I want to show you two more auction items. As I told you guys, one of the things we do to support my work, but also to support Ukraine, on our Discord community, it's free, by the way, discord.aravosis.com. On our Discord community, we hold auctions. And the auctions are typically cool stuff I find in Ukraine, or typically Ukrainian-themed stuff. For example, we've got a couple of our actual people who are here with us today, Wild Hunt Corsetry. I was going to call you Wild Corset. Wild Corset sounds kind of fun, though, doesn't it? Wild Hunt Corsetry. There you are. There she is on TikTok. She has made some actually yours. Hold on. I'm going to go get it. It's sitting in the other room. 1 minute. I'm going to get yours and show people. So what we do is we auction off really cool stuff that I find in Ukraine, Vlad finds in Ukraine, or stuff like Wild Hunt is doing. Also, Carrie, CK Ariet, has been doing it for us as well, making Ukrainian jewelry. Now, Wild Hunt, I'm going to call you Wild Hunt. Wild Hunt is of Ukrainian origin, so American, but Ukrainian American. And check this out. This is a choker that she made that we're auctioning off this week. She made this by hand. I mean, look at this. Absolutely. I'm going to take it out just to show people. No, because I was taking pictures of it today. It's not up in the auction yet. Actually, I've got to put it up still, but I was taking pictures today. Absolutely. I can wear it. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. And even the clasps and stuff, I was looking, the clasp is just beautiful. She has sort of this old style clasp, but it's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? Totally made by hand. And she, she's been trying to sort of make things, they're very specific designs, because in Ukraine, I don't want to speak out of turn here because I don't necessarily know these things, but the designs are very specific for different regions and things like that. So the designs are very, the design sort of says something about the actual, it kind of makes sense. The different arts and crafts are from different regions. Anyway, so beautiful what she did. So we're auctioning this off. I showed you guys which I think this is so great, the Ukrainian traffic police pin from the early 1990s from I didn't mention, from the town of Kherson. Because if you look at the bottom, there's it looks like the letters X and H and then 0068. You see in the bottom, X and H 0068. The X and the H are actually Ukrainian HN. It's HN because it's Kherson. So this is a traffic police badge from the town of Kherson. Kherson, which is, show you on the map. Thank you, Nico. Kherson, which is the town right here that there's been a lot of fighting in. That is where, by the way, the flooding has happened. Remember, the dam that the Russians blew up was right here. So all this area was flooded. So Kherson, we've talked about a lot in the war. Anyway, auctioning these off. And hang on. Two more things. One more thing. Two more things. I've got this, which I think is just lovely. Some of these things I'm keeping, but this one I decided I'm not going to keep. It is a handmade ornament of an angel, but it's done in the style of the Ukrainian. I don't know how you say it in English. Is it like pisanku? or Pusanku, Pysanku or KY, which are the way they do the Easter eggs. But I think it's just lovely, and both sides are the same. So auctioning this off, handmade in Ukraine. And the final thing is I was able to get, and this one's real, which is nice, a real Ukrainian military belt, but it's the older ones where they're brass. I've got a Soviet version myself that I got in Russia back in 1993 when I was in Russia, but it's really nice because it's brass. The newer ones are kind of light and they're paint. Actually, some of the newer ones I'm going to be auctioning off as well, but this is one of the old ones, and it's nice because it's brass. You can see the Ukrainian trident, decent, nice patina on it, and it's a black belt, black military belt, has a little clasp at the end, but very cool. And I mean, I took a picture. I will show you. I took a picture with it on. They're great. I have, like I said, I have the Soviet one, and I will actually. I'm going to show you one thing. I did buy two, but the second one, I'm keeping because the second one is this one I'm keeping though. This one is Ukrainian Navy. Look at this. I love this. Is that great? Oh, the Patron poster. Yes, I've got it. I forgot about that. I've got it in my thing. Hang on. But isn't that great? So I'm keeping this one for myself. I totally forgot about the Patron poster is in my kit there. I've got it. Hold on. Let me put the, all right. I'm going to write myself a note. I will try to do the Patron poster for next week. I forgot about that. Shoot, it would have been perfect. Well, you know what? Let me see. I still may be able to put it up today or tomorrow. Let me see. Because it's his birthday, so the poster is cute. But aren't these belts great? I love these things. But they're but like I said, this one's nice because it actually is brass, so it's one of the old ones. And I had Vlad look at it, and Vlad said it's real. So it passed the important Vlad test. So, but they sell a lot of the new. Well, it's funny. It makes me kind of laugh because the new ones, you'll find Ukrainians selling stuff, and they often will want to give you new stuff, and you're like, I don't want the new stuff. I want the old stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I want a belt buckle that clearly is 40 years old, I don't want a belt buckle that's new. In any case, what you do with my Discord, go to the Discord, go to discord.aravosis.com, or you can find the Discord in my profile on TikTok. Click the Linktree link. Discord's the second thing that comes up. You guys can find it at aravosis.com as well. That's my list of links. But go there. You have to you have to read the README if you're new. You read the README, you click, I accept the terms and conditions or whatever, and then it should open up the whole Discord and you will see the auctions on the left-hand side. Or if you're on your phone, you'll just scroll down. If you're on a computer, it's the left-hand side. You'll see the auctions and you'll see VIP auctions for the paid supporters and the public auctions for everybody. Now, I'm going to have about 9 different auction items this week. I've only got maybe 5 up, I think. I'm still, each one, I got a photograph and blah, blah, blah. So it takes a little bit of time. But there will be more auction items going up in the next day. Well, it's the last little thing on the Soviet stuff. I got the Soviet stuff back in, during the Soviet Union. I was in the Soviet Union and got Soviet stuff. And then I also got Soviet stuff in 1993 in Russia. It's just that right now, I'm not really partial to the Soviet stuff. Thank you, Alex, for the hearts. I think old Ukrainian stuff during the Soviet years is potentially interesting anyway, right? But the old, yeah. Yeah. No idea what that means, but you're leaving. Okay, sorry, had to deal with someone just got their wings. Someone just got their wings. Bye-bye, wings. All right. Okay, let's keep going, guys. All right, so let's do questions. God, it's hot here today. It's funny. I think because it's been so sunny out, my apartment is just like, even though I've got the air on super cold. Oh, we had a super chat question. That's right. Thank you, Mikhail. I forgot about that. We did have a super chat question that I missed. Did you see Russian ambassador said they won't target civilian ships? I did see that. Yes. If Ukraine sinks a Russian ship, would there? Okay. So first, the Russian ambassador to the U.S. claimed today, Russia would never hit a civilian ship. Well, the Russians literally came out and said, we will strike any civilian ships that try to go to Ukraine. I mean, they said it, right? Oh, we would never do that. The rest of the super chat from 6 Evo, thank you, 6 Evo, says, if Ukraine sinks a Russian ship, would their response be, if Ukraine sinks a Russian ship, would the Russian response be a missile attack or worse? Well, there's a couple problems here. The ships might not be Russian ships. They might be other ships, right? Right? A lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff is other countries. You know what I mean? So they're not necessarily Russian. So, which is actually one of the problems. So, like, if Ukraine were to, if Russia, frankly, are trying to hit the ships transporting oil from Russia or grain from Ukraine, they're not military ships, they're civilian ships. So all of a sudden, you're bombing a ship from Liberia that has a crew from all over Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, right? And now you've killed civilians of 25 different countries. I mean, it can be problematic if you are trying to keep a coalition together of countries that support you. So from Ukraine's perspective, hitting a civilian ship can be problematic. Russia will freak out if Ukraine hits one of the ships coming from Russia. They will probably respond by blowing up some of the ships. Although, honestly, I'm not convinced any ships will go from Ukraine. I'm just not convinced they will. It's hard to say what happens next because it depends. Will Turkey, will NATO turn around and try to help? You know, will we try to escort some of the Ukrainian ships? If we do, the Russians probably wouldn't dare touch them. But I'm not convinced Russia would touch the ships anyway, unless Ukraine goes after Russian ships first. What Russia is doing, which the White House warned about today, either today or yesterday, is that Russia is laying mines in the sea. They've put a bunch of mines in the water off of Ukraine's coast, or near Ukraine's coast at least, where the ships need to come to get the grain. So basically, Russia doesn't even need to blow them up. Russia just has to sit back and the ships blow up and Russia goes, gosh, how did that happen? I saw somebody else say yesterday that another issue could be Russia could use some of their submarines to blow up some of the ships going and coming from Ukraine and just deny it. And it could take months. At least one of the military folks I was following was saying it could take months to figure out an investigation as to what blew up the ship, right? A ship blows up. Was it Ukraine? Was it Russia? Who knows, right? Was it a mine? Thank you, Big Hawk. Was it a mine? Was it a torpedo? Right? So Russia still has a lot of options here, but I think it really depends. Russia will go nuts. Yes, I think Russia will go nuts if Ukraine hits a ship. But at this point, you know, I feel like let Russia go nuts. I mean, what's the point? I don't really subscribe to the theory that, which I think is the Biden theory, that somehow we think we're going to manage Russia's response, and if we don't give Ukraine too much, then Russia won't be too mad at us and them and blah blah blah, right? And if Ukraine doesn't do too much to Russia, Russia won't hit them too hard. Russia's already hitting them pretty hard. And yeah, they're going after the grain facilities now. But you know what? If Russia really wants to go after the grain facilities, if I were Ukraine, I'd be like, fine, we'll blow up your ships. You know? But I mean, Ukraine can escalate too. Honestly, I will say this too. I was thinking about this last night, and I understand why it's a problem for NATO, but the best way for Ukraine to get its land back is to steal land from Russia. This is my personal opinion here, but I was thinking about this last night and thinking, you know, and they could. I mean, the Wagner Group showed you can get a hell of a lot done with not that many men if you go into Russia, because they're not that good. And they don't have that many men in the country now because they're all fighting in Ukraine. But you know, NATO would soil its britches, to use a nicer expression, if Ukraine did that. But I think exactly, take Belgorod. Ukraine needs to go and take Belgorod, take the town of Belgorod, and then tell Russia, fine, you know, you don't like it, let's trade. But they're not going to get. I feel like they're not going to get their land back if they don't. But again, we are still. By the way, too. I'm going to mention this because it does piss me off. You know, Ukraine is having a hard time in the counteroffensive because Russia had months and months and months and months and months to dig in. Why did Russia have months to dig in? In large part because NATO didn't come around in terms of giving Ukraine the weapons it wanted and needed until this year, right? Had NATO decided a year ago to give Ukraine tanks, Ukraine would have had the damn tanks last year. Ukraine would have had American tanks at least probably by March A couple months ago, they would have received American tanks. Now they'll be lucky if they get the American tanks in the fall, probably next year. Fighter jets. Had we promised fighter jets at the beginning, Ukraine could have had the fighter jets by last Christmas. Now, who the hell knows when they're getting them? We dragged our feet from the beginning because we didn't want escalation. Basically, we were what's the expression about, we were trying to be half pregnant, right? We want to be pregnant, but not pregnant. So maybe we can be half pregnant, right? Let's help Ukraine, but let's not help Ukraine so much that Russia gets upset. And I will say this too, Biden from the beginning didn't want Ukraine to win. I have said, and by the way, it now is accepted as conventional wisdom among the defense folks. When you, not anybody with the Biden administration, obviously, but people on the outside, they'll admit the Biden administration did not want Ukraine to win. They wanted to stop Ukraine from losing. They didn't want Russia to win, but they didn't want Ukraine to win either. They wanted a tie. Because if there's a tie, both Russia and Ukraine feel like, oh, now we have to negotiate and, reach a nice little deal. But we dragged our feet in giving Ukraine the weapon it needed. And all that time, by the way, the counteroffensive took forever too, because not just Ukraine had to be trained. By the way, that training could have happened last year. Okay. But Ukraine had to get the weapons, and those weapons they could have gotten last year. They wouldn't have had to wait all this time, and Russia wouldn't have had all these months to dig all of these trenches and put down all of these mines. It pisses me off. And I mean, we are in large part to blame for why this counteroffensive is so hard. It really is. And again, we've done a lot to help Ukraine, but I always give the example of like somebody with cancer. You've got a really horrific cancer. It'll kill you if you don't get the treatment. If you get the treatment, you could be cured. And the doctor says, well, you know what? I know the treatment costs $1 million, or even better, a generous donor says, I know the treatment costs $1 million. I'm going to give you $600,000. And you go, well, that's nice, but the treatment costs $1 million. So it doesn't help me. We wanted to help Ukraine, but not help them too much. And what we got was Russia had ample time to dig in. So now the counteroffensive is being extremely, 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 and we still haven't given Ukraine enough of the anti-aircraft weapons it needs. It just really unnerves me. Paul Gray, super chat. Thank you, Paul. How hot does Ukraine's summer get, and do wildfires occur and affect military actions? What an interesting question. I don't know. I know we've got is Vlad and our other Ukrainian. That's not my Vlad. That's a different Vlad that was with us on TikTok. Any of the Ukrainians out there? How hot does the weather get in Ukraine? And are you in danger of the wildfires that Europe is having, for example, like Greece is having wildfires now? Callum says not really any hotter than the UK, except the UK is 100 degrees right now. Peter says it's in the 80s. Okay. In the 80s. Okay. So not really. Okay. That sounds like it's not. And part of the issue, no fires yet, but do they get fires? Does Ukraine get wildfires or no? Because I mean, one of the things is Greece is also a very arid area. So like Greece is dry, which is why wildfires are effective, because it's such a dry climate. And you know what I mean? That you've got a lot of things to catch on fire. Same temperature as central Canada. It happens in dry summers. Okay. Peter says it can happen, but apparently it's not happening. Okay. Interesting though. That was interesting. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that. And Peter, thank you, Paul, but thank you, Peter, for answering that. All right, guys, let's do more questions. Yes, I did. I caught up with your questions. Anything else? What else we got? 2 NATO planes went missing over the Black Sea. I did not see that. Nope. Didn't hear anything about that. Well, anyone ever truly face war crimes? It's tough because you've got to get the person. And actually, war crimes are difficult for 2 reasons. One, you've got to get the person. And the question becomes, will you ever get Vladimir Putin? Will you ever get the woman who runs the children's agency for the Russian government? Because she as well is one of the war criminals, because she's been running the kidnapping scheme. So she was also charged by the International Criminal Court with an arrest warrant. Will you ever get them? Right? Having said that, the International Criminal Court was able to get Milosevic in Serbia. And I'm forgetting, what was the other guys? I don't know, was it Karovich or what? There was another guy. I remember one of the other top guys that they were able to get. No, that's a lie, Gary. That's not true. sorry, we've got a troll lying and saying Ukraine lost 80% of its tanks. In fact, I was reading today, Ukraine lost 10%. I believe it's 10% of its Bradley fighting vehicles. Ukraine has lost, I believe. But yeah, no, they haven't lost 80% of their tanks. Bradley's a Russian. Bradley Ski. Like Bradley Ski says that Ukraine's lost 80% of their tanks. Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, all right, what else we got here? That's a good question, Nicholas. I don't know. Nicholas asks, if NATO did anything to Belarus, would Russia do anything back since they might not be able to waste any more missiles and ammo? That's a really good question. You know, Belarus and Russia have got their little friendship treaty. So in principle, right, Russia would help. Russia certainly doesn't want, let me rephrase this. Russia certainly would want to respond. For example, if the Poles were to bomb the Wagner Group base in Belarus, okay, the Wagner Group base that's there now in Belarus. If the Poles were to bomb it, the Russians would want to respond because they wouldn't want somebody that's under their protection to be attacked and they didn't do something. Because if they don't do anything, then it makes it look like they won't help other people who come to them, right? So it means that their promise of a treaty of friendship doesn't mean anything. Having said that, like you said, what could Russia, honestly, it's a good question. What could Russia do? I mean, if Russia were to respond, well, here's the thing too. Poland attacks Belarus. Russia attacks Poland. If Belarus attacks Poland, all of NATO can attack Belarus. If Russia attacks Poland, Russia's at war with NATO. I don't think Russia would respond. I don't think Russia would respond at all. I mean, not respond at all, but I think Russia would be in a very tough position if any NATO country were to attack Belarus, because they'd want to do something, but Russia knows. But bottom line is, Russia can't afford to get into a war with NATO right now. Thank you, Brock Smith. And it's not just that they don't have, that they're worried about how many missiles and how many weapons they've got. They're not winning the war. No, I would say they're not necessarily, well, Russia's in a weird thing. I never quite know whether to say they're losing or not. They're not doing well, but they do occupy 17% of Ukraine, right? I mean, we've got looking at the map, Russia occupies this. I mean, that's something, right? Having said that, they're not advancing. Russia, at the very least, is kind of stuck where they are. They can't advance. Russia certainly cannot afford to go to war with NATO. If Russia goes to war with NATO, they lose everything because NATO will destroy them. Because they're having a hard time with Ukraine, they would be destroyed by NATO. So I don't. It's a good question. I don't know. My guess is Biden and everybody else, Biden, the Germans, and the French are going to tell Duda in Poland, please do not attack Belarus. Because there still is the risk that Putin responds, and then we're all at war, right? But it would be very ballsy of Poland to do it, because I'm not sure what Putin does in response, because he cannot afford to go to war with NATO. Actually, the big issue is Putin tries to convince NATO he will go to war, which is what he's been doing the whole time, so that we pull our punches, right? So that Belarus doesn't get attacked, so that we don't give Ukraine all the weapons it needs, because we're afraid of what Putin's going to do, Anyway, more questions, guys. More questions. Oh, that's interesting. Mike says, in response to last night's Russian terrorist attack on Odessa, the city asked UNESCO to exclude Russia from the organization. An online meeting was held between UNESCO and Odessa. I mean, UNESCO, the United Nations is pretty awful, though. I can't imagine the UN. Excuse me. Thank you, Jens. That's cute. Or I shouldn't say thank you, but that's cute, Jens. The United Nations, I don't think is going to do anything to Russia, but it'd be nice if they did. But that's an interesting question, though. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Anything else? Bingo. Brian says Article 5 guarantees a meeting, not a NATO war. Exactly. Article 5, basically NATO, I mean, the way it works with NATO is there's no guarantee of NATO going to war if you attack one of the countries. The countries are all supposed to rally around and help, but each country is supposed to help to its ability and desire. Somebody had pulled that off before. What was it? What was the quote before? You guys pulled it up from Article 5 as deemed necessary, I think is it, right? That each country should respond as it deems necessary. So basically, you don't even have to go to war if Poland gets attacked. NATO wouldn't have to. But look, if Poland gets attacked by NATO and others, they would, obviously the US, Britain, US and Britain are going to help anybody that gets attacked. That's a guarantee by Russia in NATO. The other guys hopefully will help as well, but the US and Britain certainly would. And the Baltics and Poland are like pit bulls, pit bulls being held back by a leash, just waiting to go after Russia. So they would help too. They would absolutely help. Anything else, guys? Otherwise, I will do a summary, and we go to Discord. It's Thursday night. We go to Discord for a little bit. It's really enough. Malayathos, I don't know what their motivation is. I don't know what her motivation is. I've been trying to figure out a lot of people's motivations. Greenwald, David Sachs, a number of people's. I wish I could figure out what motivates them. It's very strange. All right, guys, I'm going to do a quick summary of the news we covered, and then I'm going to go to our Discord for a little bit. Feel free to join us there. We'll hang out a little bit at the Discord. It's an area called John's After Party. So go there when we're done, discord.aravosis.com. Let me... Okay, so we got Dave. Boy, the number of angels who have gotten their wings here. How did Russia do in Afghanistan, little Russian troll? I believe you had your little tails between your legs and you lost the Soviet Union because of Afghanistan. You lost your entire country. So, sorry, the trolls I'm dealing with some trolls over here. We're at the point in the show where the Russian trolls get really upset and they can't control themselves anymore and they start lashing out, which is always nice because then I get to block them. And a number of them have been chiming in, So how did the U.S. do in Afghanistan? That's why I was like, well, how did Russia do in Afghanistan? I believe you lost the entire Soviet Union because of how badly you did in Afghanistan. And by the way, Ukraine, 10 times worse. 10 times? Not 10 times worse. Ukraine's about 5 times more deaths easily than what happened in Afghanistan in only a year. And Afghanistan was 10 years of the Russians losing 14,500 men, and that was considered a disaster. Russia's probably lost 60, 70,000 men easily. All right, guys, day 511 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. Russia hit Odessa and neighboring Mykolaiv last night. Ukraine is threatening Russian shipping in exchange for Russian threatening Ukraine shipping. The idea behind it might be just to scare off the insurers, which then dries up some of Russia's oil revenue, which is very interesting. Will a Russian blockade work? The British Ministry of Defense says if the Russians really try to go after Ukrainian ships, Russian ships themselves could actually be at risk of Ukrainian drone ships, as I call them. Uncrewed surface vehicles. I think it's a horrible name. Drone ships, I prefer. And coastal defense missiles. Washington Post reports that Ukraine started using cluster munitions against Russian trenches today, on the last day. And according to one report from Russian troops on the front lines, they're getting, quote unquote, the forces of Ukraine are demolishing our positions in Bakhmut with cluster munitions, which is great. Let's see what happens, but it sounds like the cluster munitions are having a significant impact with the trenches, with the Russian trenches. Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, Russia has still not allowed the United Nations access to the roof of plant number 4, which they've been wanting to access. Ukraine is increasingly concerned the Russians are planning another attack on that nuclear plant. Wagner Group in Belarus is training Belarusian military. They held a joint military training operation today. The head of the Belarusian Red Cross branch says that they've been helping Russia steal Ukrainian children for rehabilitation. A new crowdfunding campaign launched in Lithuania is trying to collect 300,000 euros to buy kamikaze drones for the Ukrainians. And today is Patron's birthday. Patron is the bomb-sniffing dog, the adorable little Jack Russell Terrier, and it is his 4th birthday today. All right, guys, let's say good night. Remember, I do have the coffee chat Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. That's Washington, D.C. or New York City time. and join us 11 a.m. Woo, 11 a.m. Saturday morning. And there you go. So otherwise, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern. Oh, I'm sorry, it's for the paid members on TikTok, Ko-fi, YouTube, etc. And otherwise, I will see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, LWD. All right, guys, go over to the Discord, discord.aravosis.com. I will be there in about 2 minutes. All right. Thanks, guys.